Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's report focuses on one of the most significant drone operations of the entire conflict, an event that involved 93 Ukrainian drones striking deep inside Russian controlled territory, hitting what Ukrainian sources describe as secret weapons positions and then targeting a convoy that was attempting to secure or evacuate assets after the attack. As always, we will examine this event with clarity, context, and a neutral tone, looking closely at the strategic, political, and humanitarian implications of such a complex operation. This story has been developing quickly, and it highlights a trend that has been shaping the modern battlefield: long-range unmanned systems acting independently or in coordinated swarms. The scale of this particular strike, involving nearly 100 drones, demonstrates a growing technological capability that was rarely witnessed before the full-scale war in Ukraine began. Yet it also shows the intensifying pressure both sides face as the conflict continues with no clear resolution in sight. To understand the significance of this operation, we first need to take a step back. Over the past 2 years, Ukraine has shifted from mainly defensive drone usage to offensive deep strike capability. Early in the war, drone activity focused on reconnaissance, adjusting artillery, and short-range kamikaze attacks. Ukraine relied heavily on commercially adapted drones because these were accessible, affordable, and simple to deploy. But as the war evolved, so did the technology. Ukraine's military and private developers began creating long-range drones capable of traveling hundreds of kilometers, equipped with advanced navigation systems and able to evade electronic warfare. This strike involving 93 drones is a direct continuation of that evolution. According to available reports, the drones targeted a location where Russia was believed to be storing sensitive equipment. Some sources describe the facility as housing components for advanced weapons, possibly sensors, radar modules, or experimental systems that Russia has been testing. Others suggest that the drones may have targeted mobile systems that were preparing for deployment. What remains consistent across reporting is that Ukraine's operation was precise, well-timed, and intended to cripple assets that could have influenced the battlefield. Following the strike on the weapons site, a Russian convoy was reportedly hit as it attempted to respond or relocate. This suggests Ukraine was tracking Russian movements in real time, either through satellite data, intelligence cooperation, or persistent aerial surveillance. It also demonstrates a layered operation: an initial blow to a high-altitude site, followed by a secondary strike that disrupted recovery efforts. Such two-stage operations are rare, especially at this scale, but they reveal a level of coordination that speaks to Ukraine's increasing command and control sophistication. The use of 93 drones is also symbolically important. When drone warfare began trending heavily in the conflict, strikes usually involved a small handful of drones. A swarm of this size indicates the shift from isolated drone use to massed drone warfare. The battlefield value of this approach is clear: overwhelming air defense systems, saturating radars, and ensuring that even if many drones are intercepted, some still break through and hit their targets. Mass strikes also stress logistical and psychological aspects of defense. Every drone that appears on a radar screen demands attention, resources, and energy to counter. On the Russian side, this attack highlights vulnerabilities that have been increasingly exposed in recent months. Russia has been trying to shield critical infrastructure and military assets deep inside its territory by deploying dense air defense layers. Systems such as Pantsir, Tor, Buk, and S-300 have been placed around factories, logistics hubs, and bases. But Ukraine has consistently found ways to slip through the cracks. Drones flying at low altitudes, drones using stealthy routes, drones programmed to follow terrain, and drones equipped with electronic countermeasures all reduce the effectiveness of static air defenses. The question many analysts are asking is, how does Ukraine continue conducting such deep operations despite Russia's massive territory and its extensive radar network? The answer lies partly in technology, partly in preparation, and partly in adaptation. Ukraine has continuously refined its drones to reduce radar signatures, and engineers have developed improved autopilot systems that navigate complicated airspace without relying on vulnerable satellite links. At the same time, intelligence gathering, likely supported by Western partners, has allowed Ukraine to identify the weakest points in Russia's air defense grid. This specific strike also reflects the broader transformation of war. Drones have made distance less meaningful. A target hundreds of kilometers away is no longer safe simply because it is far from the front line. And with costs dropping, drones offer asymmetric power. A comparatively inexpensive drone can threaten or damage equipment that costs millions. If reports of Ukraine hitting Russian mobile weapon assets are accurate, then this operation may have cost Russia far more than the hardware destroyed. It would mean Russia now has to allocate more defensive resources, reposition more equipment, and revise strategies for storing or transporting sensitive systems. There is another dimension we must consider: Russia's internal response. Whenever deep strikes occur, especially large-scale ones, they attract strong reactions within Russian political and media spheres. Some commentators argue that such strikes reveal failures in intelligence and air defense. Others insist that they justify retaliatory escalation. The Kremlin often attempts to downplay the damage publicly, while internally reassessing how such attacks were possible. This dynamic has been present since the early days of Ukraine's drone program, and it becomes more pronounced each time a major strike takes place. The attack involving 93 drones also fits into a wider trend of Ukraine targeting what it considers vital nodes in Russia's military logistics. In previous months, Ukraine conducted successful drone strikes on oil depots, airfields, electronic warfare sites, and industrial facilities tied to weapon production. By hitting these targets, Ukraine aims not only to disrupt military operations, but also to weaken Russia's long-term ability to maintain its war effort. Each strike sends a message that the war's geography is no longer limited to the front lines. But while these operations have strategic value for Ukraine, they also raise serious humanitarian and economic concerns. Drone strikes inside Russia inevitably risk unintended consequences for civilians, even if the intended targets are military. Ukraine insists that it aims only at military infrastructure. However, drones flying long distances can face navigation interference, and debris from interceptions can fall in populated areas. This adds another layer of risk that shapes global reactions. International partners tread a delicate line. Some Western nations strongly support Ukraine's use of drones for self-defense. Others express concerns about escalating the conflict, especially when strikes occur deep inside Russian territory. This tension between supporting Ukraine's right to defend itself and avoiding escalation has been a recurring theme throughout the war. Each major strike prompts renewed discussions about military aid, the types of weapons allowed, and the political consequences of enabling deeper attacks. From a humanitarian perspective, drone escalation on either side of the conflict prolongs the suffering of civilians. Every attack, whether in Ukraine or Russia, creates fear, uncertainty, and displacement. Families live under the threat of sirens, explosions, or power outages caused by strikes. The broader impact includes disrupted services, damaged infrastructure, and long-term psychological stress. As we analyze the military aspects of this strike, it's important to remember that real people are caught between these operations, experiencing consequences far beyond the battlefield. At the same time, Ukraine's drone program has become a symbol of innovation under pressure. The country's engineers have built drones in improvised workshops, garages, basements, and labs. Volunteers contribute components, universities contribute research, tech companies contribute software. This decentralized ecosystem allows Ukraine to adapt quickly and mass-produce drones that meet immediate battlefield needs. The strike of 93 drones might be one example of what this ecosystem can produce at scale. On the other side, Russia continues expanding its own drone program. It has increased production of loitering munitions, reconnaissance drones, and long range strike drones sourced from other countries. The rapid growth of drone warfare by both sides indicates that this technology will define not just this conflict, but many future conflicts around the world. Military doctrines are already being rewritten based on lessons learned from drone engagements in Ukraine. Looking ahead, military analysts predict that drone swarms will become even more sophisticated. AI-assisted flight paths, coordinated swarm behavior, improved stealth features, and multi-destination strike capabilities are being researched globally. Ukraine's recent strike signals that drone warfare is moving toward mass saturation attacks, where numbers matter as much as payloads. This shift forces nations to rethink air defense entirely. Traditional systems built to shoot down aircraft are not optimized for dozens or hundreds of small, inexpensive drones. As this conflict continues, these developments will shape global security conversations. Countries in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East are all observing how Ukraine and Russia deploy drones. They are studying the vulnerabilities exposed, the tactics used, the countermeasures tested, and the failures observed. The lessons will influence future defense budgets, procurement strategies, and technology development worldwide. The 93 drone strike also highlights another emerging trend: distributed warfare. Rather than relying on massive platforms like fighter jets or bombers, militaries increasingly rely on distributed systems such as drone fleets, mobile launch platforms, and networked battlefield sensors. These systems are cheaper, harder to target, and easier to scale. Ukraine has embraced this approach out of necessity, but it may soon become the standard globally. At the same time, this strike underscores the conflict's ongoing economic impact. Each attack inside Russia has ripple effects on industries, transportation, and energy networks. Insurance rates fluctuate, investors react, production schedules shift. The war's economic footprint now stretches far beyond Ukraine's borders. Global markets respond to the perception of instability, particularly when military strikes reach deeper into Russian territory. Diplomatic reactions will also evolve in response to these events. Nations balancing alliances with both Ukraine and Russia will find themselves in increasingly difficult positions. The world must navigate not only the military consequences of the war, but also the political signaling embedded within every strike, every response, and every counterstrike. Ultimately, this operation involving 93 Ukrainian drones illustrates how the war has entered a new technological phase. It reflects determination on Ukraine's part to strike high, new targets, and disrupt Russia's capabilities. It highlights vulnerabilities within Russia's defense networks. It shows how drone warfare has transformed military strategy, and it reveals the complex political, humanitarian, and global implications that accompany every escalation. As this conflict continues to unfold, the world will watch how each side adapts, innovates, and responds. What remains certain is that drone warfare is no longer a side element of the conflict. It is now one of the defining tools shaping the war's trajectory. The 93 drone strike will likely be studied for years as an example of coordinated unmanned warfare executed at scale. And as always, we continue to emphasize the importance of diplomacy, dialogue, and peaceful solutions. Technology may evolve, strategies may change, and operations may intensify, but the human cost remains at the center of every conflict. Behind every headline, every drone, and every strike, there are real lives affected. The hope remains that these developments eventually push all sides toward meaningful negotiations rather than further escalation. If you found this analysis informative, stay tuned for more detailed breakdowns of the ongoing conflict, emerging technologies, and major developments shaping the battlefield. Thank you for watching, and stay safe wherever you are.